Good morning. I'm Rich Crow. I'm the president of Booz Allen Civil Sector. Thank you today. We're excited to have you with us at the Helix, our Center for Innovation. And we're excited today to be joined by FedGov Today and Francis Rose, hosting taping of one of the future segments that I guess will be aired on April 7th on ABC 7. We're going to talk about three segments today. The first is contemporary patterns for unlocking the power of data, the present and future role of AI, and then how do we maximize and securely deploy these solutions to really affect greater change and outcome for mission sets that we support. The topic is data. It is probably the most valuable commodity the government has today in solving missions. It's ubiquitous, it's everywhere, but it's corralling it and wrangling it and getting it into a better place that we can kind of take on these missions sets more effectively. We call this data-enabled missions because each agency has their own unique missions. They have their own problems that they're trying to solve. But when we look at these missions, there's some underlying tools and techniques and technologies available that allow agencies to affect the change they need to be more productive and deliver better services to citizens. We call this data-enabled missions. Now, in order to get to that data-enabled mission, there is a data enablement journey. And there's three phases to this. The first is phase one on this roadmap, which is basically identifying the data that you need for the mission outcomes you're trying to achieve. Identify that data, collect the data, validate the data, get it into one place, and kind of like doing the grooming. And then once you have that, then agencies, as you all well know, need to then move forward and start migrating stuff to the clouds, getting it into better locations, and then being able to take advantage with modern IT modernization and DevSecOps solutions to enable those cloud technologies to deliver better services. And then the third phase really is then how do you start thinking about bringing tools like AI to bear? And you can start bringing AI and other data technologies into the stack that you can really start creating mission stacks, essentially, on top of your tech stacks that allow the agencies to give better results faster, more efficient, and make a more effective and efficient government outcome. If you look at the civilian agencies across, it gets really exciting to think about what the potential is to unleash this power. I mean, you can imagine the VA is already doing extraordinary stuff with the data that they've unlocked. If you look forward into the future, how many more services, faster, better, more effective, can be provided for veterans and better outcomes by the Department of Veterans Affairs? If you think about FEMA in its role in response to natural disasters, how much better can they be at predicting and pre-deploying equipment based on having better outcomes in terms of resilience for the United States and critical infrastructure in the face of natural disasters? And then you start thinking about the CDC and the recent experiences learned from the pandemic about being able to use data across multiple state jurisdictions to proactively predict different health crises before they get out of control, to alert public health officials to pending problems and deploy resources appropriately within the health system. These are tough challenges. They're complex. But the exciting thing is they're surmountable. It's a lot of work. A lot of things have to happen. But we can get there. And we're at the cusp of, I would say, a revolution that's really going to be spurred by better and more access to data. Today, we're going to talk about, we'll talk with several federal mission leaders and Booz Allen experts to talk about this data enablement journey, where they're at with all this. So it doesn't really matter where you're at in the journey, whether you're in the very beginning of just trying to identify where you're at, or you're in the middle of modernizing your IT stack, or starting to implement AI. What we're going to talk about here today is how you can quickly get up to speed wherever you are on the journey. And it's really important to kind of define where you are in that roadmap and really where the end of the journey is and the outcomes you're trying to achieve.
Sagar, thanks very much for your time. Thanks for joining me today. Where are you inside FAST in particular, but broadly across GSA in your data enablement journey? Welcome.
So thank you for having me. So we started this journey around 5 to 6 years ago. And our primary objective of our strategy was to continuously innovate, build, and ultimately commoditize the technology layers that form the ecosystem where security, data, and cloud are converging. And the idea was to use this as a force multiplier or accelerator for the business transformation. So, in a sense, it was a data-centric, security baked-in ecosystem that can enable the composable architecture, which helps in terms of product mindset. So, on the onset, we FAS had this federal marketplace. I know many of you know FAS is a more of a middle person in terms of the customer personas. There's customers such as suppliers, the agencies that use the services of FAS, and contracting officer. So when we started this journey, we wanted to make sure that we have this product mindset. Idea was, as we are building these products, we wanted to decompose that into a business capabilities. And the first layer was making sure we automate the CI/CD pipeline in terms of developing and deploying software. So that was the first layer from a compute and storage perspective. The second layer was, as we work to, as we have these products needs to talk to each other. So we needed this idea about API framework. That was the second layer. The third layer, which is most important, no business transformation can be done without a data. Data is where the actual transformation happens. So we wanted to create that layer above these two layers, which is the data layer. And the idea about the data layer was we wanted to make sure that any data assets or processes are discoverable, identifiable, and is present to the user in a format they could make their own decision. That's about the data-driven decisions. And that part of the data layer was built over the period of time. Just like the way you have a CI/CD pipeline, it has a life cycle in order for developer to build the code, develop, and deploy. There is a life cycle for that. Similarly, data has also a life cycle. You got to identify the data source, then you got to curate the data and present it in a way that the business users can make those data-driven decisions. So the notion of our strategy was always been, as we build the one layer, which is a CI/CD layer, you build it, standardize it, commoditize it. The next layer was the API layer, the layer above that security layer. Now we are in a journey where the data layer has at a given time that we could bring any data source into the life cycle. We could bring any tool when it's in a seamless fashion if the demand, if there is a demand for it, and the users would be able to govern their data in a more self-service manner and make those data-driven decision making. And that's where we are in the journey. But what I want to point out was the layer approach. Nobody can start at a data layer in the beginning. We got to start with the cloud layer, and then you go to the security layer, and then to the API and the data, because the data layer needs to inherit the layers below that. And so where we are as part of the journey is right now, our users at a given time can have their self-services capabilities without worrying or without depending on, relying on the technology people in my organization.
A couple of concepts there I want to ask you about, because you use terms that I don't hear very often when it comes to this journey. One is commoditizing the data, and the other is curation. Curation is one that I expect to hear a lot more than I actually do. Why are those two concepts so important to the journey that you're taking and getting you to whatever the destination is for that journey, Sagar?
And so I guess the whole concept about is that we hear the democratization of AI and ML. At the end of the day, when you say artificial intelligence or machine learning, it's all about the data. And idea is, if data is your biggest asset, we want to make sure we give a technology in the hands of tools in the hands of the users who are expert in the data, which are the business people. And the commoditization is they don't have to worry about where the data comes from, how to curate the data, how to manipulate the data along the way, or extract and manipulate. And so those things are done from an engineering perspective. So the business, the users can focus on that high value where they could look at the efficiency, they could look from a mission enablement perspective. So I think those things have done because of the strategy that we put in place like 6 years ago or 5 years ago is about making those layers as a commodity. And the curation of our data, which is I kind of talked about this data life cycle, everything has a life cycle. So those life cycle of the layer, it is also commoditized. So at a given time, you could bring new data source, or you could bring new tools. And the reason I'm talking about the new tool being AI and ML, the ecosystem allows any news and technology to be inserted seamlessly. And that goes back to this standardization or commodity from an IT perspective.
We have less than a minute left, Sagar. How do you map this journey so that you know where you are and where you want to go and how you're doing on getting to where you want to go?
From a journey perspective, I would say from a data-enabled mission outcome, where we are in this journey is we pretty much know how to develop and deploy a software. We pretty much know how to develop and deploy a product. Data is also a product. So from that journey perspective, where we see ourselves that we are open for empowering our business users to use the tools that they like, identify or access the data wherever that resides, and make sure the data is secured, the data is clean, and at a given time, you could use it in a trust state. So those things are, from a journey perspective, that's where we are. And I believe that from moving forward, from a mission perspective, anytime, at a given time, any user who want to bring and leverage from AI and ML, that can happen.
Sagar, it's great to have you. Thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you.